Hello, and welcome to the 6.5 Summit. I'm Shelley Kramer, one of the founding partners of Futurum Research, and on behalf of my team at Futurum and the team at More Insights, we're glad to have you. In this Fireside Chat discussion, featured as part of the general session of our 6.5 Summit event, we've got Futurum's Daniel Newman sitting down with the President and CEO of Splunk, Doug Merritt. Their conversation centered around data and the role it's going to have on our future. And here's a hint, that role isn't getting any smaller or any less critical moving forward. If you are focused on building a data-driven enterprise, this is one conversation you won't want to miss. Let's go check it out.
Doug Merritt, welcome to the 6.5 Summit. How are you doing today?
Good, Daniel. How are you?
I'm doing great, Doug. I'm sitting in my studio and I'm at home. I did actually travel recently for the first time in 4 months, but you look like you are traveling because I've done this with you a few times in the past and I've seen what your office looks like, and that does not look like your office. So where are you?
We got bold as a family, and a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, came down to Cabo San Lucas in Mexico.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful down here. It's beautiful down here, and it's they take COVID seriously. So masks, the hand sanitizer, temperature checks. It's a good, effective environment.
Yeah, I think getting anywhere you want to go is probably the riskiest part. If you can get somewhere, because you can kind of quarantine anywhere. So if you as a family are able to follow all the restrictions, I don't see any reason that that's really a big problem. But I really appreciate you taking the time. Obviously, we love having you as part of our keynote general session here at our very first 6.5 Summit, Doug. I've had the pleasure of talking to you a few times. You look a little more relaxed. I don't think there's any way you can't be, but I know you well enough to know there's no way that you are not working, even though you are in Cabo San Lucas.
Yeah, it's a weird paradox because I'm up at 7 and on video conferences, usually until 5 or 6 p.m. while the family is having an awesome time, and I get to look out the window and watch the fun. But it's better to be on video conferences in Cabo than it is just about anywhere else.
Absolutely. Well, again, really excited to have you here. As an analyst, I've had the chance to really enjoy learning a lot about the journey of Splunk. But for our audience here, I kind of want to start in the beginning a little bit. In this session, we want to talk about the future of work. We want to talk about building culture and stability and data and leadership. But I think for a CEO to really be able to share those points, it's always great to go back a little bit to the beginning. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your run at Splunk so far, and just a little bit about how the company has changed since you joined.
It's been a really, obviously, a fantastic journey that I'm just so thrilled to be on. I've been with Splunk for almost 6.5 years, and it has changed dramatically. And it hasn't changed in some ways too, which is kind of a cool paradox. When I came on board, we had just finished a little bit over $300 million in revenue. And last year we closed at $2.4 billion. We were under 1,000 employees. We're over 6,000 now. We're now we have sales in over 100 countries. So a much bigger company. But what I like about Splunk is the core of the culture and the attitude and the orientation still, to me, feels very, very similar. The way it was described during my interview cycle was, we are a builder, doer culture. We're kind of blue collar. We roll up our sleeves. We are so excited to get stuff done. We'd rather undercommit and overdeliver. Low politics. People are honest and forthright, and I believe that's still the case with Splunk. And I think that culture has been one of the foundations that has enabled this ridiculous amount of growth and huge product expansion and massive business transformation to actually happen, and it happened well, and still I retain our identity and a lot of our camaraderie and closeness.
Yeah, it's interesting you point all that out. I've been to your offices, I've spent some time, and I'll say that company never feels as big as it is, which I always think is an indicator of a warm culture. And, we work with a lot of great companies. And so the feeling when I've been on campus, and obviously that's been a while now for even you, was always very, very much that way. And I always enjoyed all the snacks, by the way, the top floor with the beer and the all the just the great end of day snacks in the game room. That's very San Francisco, very very Valley-ish. But I can see what you meant. But I also, just while you're talking about change, you also elicited a lot of meaningful change. Even recently, though, you mentioned the business model changes. You mentioned the way people consume. Open source, going from being more proprietary to open source. Can you just touch on that a little bit? Because I think those have been sweeping changes and have really been more like the last 1 or 2 years. Those have become really out in the front.
Yeah, we started this whole series of changes. It actually was part of my interview cycle as a CEO, which was almost exactly 5 years ago. So the idea of where we were, where we needed to go, I think has been pretty clear for a while. And we have stayed pretty consistent on what change was necessary also, but it is a high volume. We've moved from really a singular product that was on-prem, stateful and vertical scale out, our indexing and searching capability, to a cloud-based portfolio of products with a much more clear platform set of portfolios that complement indexing with stream processing, with orchestration, automation, collaboration, heavy emphasis on machine learning, whole new consumption paradigms from virtual reality to augmented reality to mobile connected experiences, continued development with our solutions around security, IT, app dev. But that expansion hasn't just been an expansion on the technical front and getting us to a cloud footprint, but that comes with a whole business model shift. We've gone from upfront revenue to ratable revenue. And through that, have had to completely change our go-to-market motions, our pricing, and the way that we actually convey value to customers, from data volume-based to infrastructure and value-based. So an amazing amount of change, more change than I could have conceived would be able to actually keep focused and execute through. And it's one of the things I'm so proud of our amazing employee and board and customer population to go through and to support.
Yeah, there must be a lot of great advisory, Doug. I think I was looking the other day on Yahoo Finance, and the market cap of the company was north of 30 billion. And for a company that you often have to tell people, or they go, "What is Splunk?" or "Who are Splunk?" or it's like you realize this is a company that's now as large as some of the biggest tech companies in the world. And so you should be really proud of those results. And it's really been at sort of the in a response to data's rapid proliferation. I said data has kind of become the North Star for business. And Splunk, you find yourself as an organization at the center of this discussion. So, I'd love to hear from you. How has the use of data changed the way that you lead and that you build the business at Splunk?
Yeah, it's a great question. And things like market cap are interesting because you're never as good as the market cap says, you're never as bad, right? They go up and down, they're out of your control. But the fundamentals of what we do, that is important. That's lasting. And we have been at the forefront of the big data movement back before people even knew to call it big data. And I think we continue. One of the things I'm really proud of with Splunk, before getting into how we use data and the thoughts around data, is our willingness to push the boundaries beyond what we are comfortable with and already know. Going back to, indexing was really, really important in search. Being able to lean forward with stream-based processing, streaming machine learning, integrating a whole host of open source componentry, from Kafka to Pulsar to Flink to Spark to Kubernetes. That willingness to look outside through a customer lens and try and really stay close to what are the important use cases and value that a customer looks for, and then come back to, now, what do we have to do to get that done? And the usual response would be double down on what you know and do so well. And while we continue to, I think, double down and improve the kernel of what Splunk was, We also have been very open to expanding across that data landscape. So whether it's data in motion, data at rest, data stored in other systems, or a whole host of different algorithmic capability to drive higher value through the platform or through the solutions. Data from our customers, data from the industry has been our primary focus to make sure that we're progressing the fundamentals of the company in the right direction.
Yeah, and what we've been through in 2020, which in January there were some fires, and we thought that would be the hallmark of our year. And boy, did that not end up being the biggest moment. But the pandemic, and you can't really have a conversation and not talk about it. It's still in parts of the world, including here in the US, a really big topic that doesn't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon. But your story, I had the chance to talk to you about this, serves as a really great example of using data to drive and inform your own decisions. Because if I recall, you basically had about a 2 or 3 day window at most to decide how you were going to run your business when the San Francisco in that whole area kind of came to a grinding halt.
I think we reacted pretty quickly in the Northern California shutdown, but we've got such a talented group of folks across Splunk, and our facilities and risk management and government affairs teams have been hard at work from the end of December to early January, given our footprint in China, in Japan, in Australia, and Singapore and Korea, working with the pandemic and trying to get a view of what was happening with the pandemic. And we'd had to shut down many of our Asian offices before we even had an inkling that was going to happen in America. So the willingness to turn to data, see what was the data saying across Asia on what was appropriate for the safety of our employees, and what were the governmental policies, and how do we very rapidly understand the location of all the employees and the health of all the employees. We'd had a few iterations and practice sessions that when it came to a bigger chunk of our employee population, 50-ish% in the US, we were able to act very quickly. It still was a lot of heroics across the entire spectrum, HR, facilities, the IT team. While we've all been able to work just about anywhere, making sure that everybody works now remotely, like for every other company, the ability to spin up VPNs on a massive basis to expand our cloud footprint and our apps footprint was a really fascinating thing to watch the IT team actually turn to Splunk so quickly and actually develop a set of solutions that now many customers are using to help accelerate remote work, all the way down to being able to ping and understand the quality of Teams or Zoom or WebEx sessions, as well as the health of VPN, and on both the security basis and an overall resiliency basis. So data definitely helped us a lot in going through the iterations, being crisp in decision-making. And it's still what we're turning to in every single office around the world to try and guide ourselves on what is the right set of decisions and protocols in a really, really dynamic situation.
Yeah, and I bet when we look back in history on this, we're going to see a big differentiation in companies that acted and responded with data and companies that didn't in terms of the outcomes. And it's early days, because as much as we like to think we're seeing the outcomes, we're still in the very beginning. It could be, this hasn't died down yet. So we could have another 6 quarters, 8 quarters, maybe even more, where this is still going to have a very lasting and material impact on business. So you mentioned a couple of things that actually kind of takes me where I wanted to go, though, because you kind of talked about, I mentioned San Francisco and California, but you're a very global company, like most of the companies involved here in the 6.5 Summit. And so while even your ability to react and respond to a market, the data had to enable you to react and respond to many markets and make decisions for a company about how to continue to act local and think global. I'm hearing more and more about some return to work in other parts of the world where this virus has subsided more successfully than it has here, which means new sets of data, new sets of decisions. And culture, which is kind of where we started, is a driving force. It's going to be a driving force in your business's success. And of course, going remote, the team all got together, made it work, has continued to sell and grow and hit numbers and drive that market cap that's either too good or not good enough. But now you got to think about culture, because a lot of the power that built you to where you were, for a short period of time, people can react and live in uncomfortable and different environments. But what ends up happening is over time, it can have a drag coefficient on your business and your operations. And so whether you bring people back some point and in different geographies are just one example of this, but you've got to be making some key decisions about how to change the culture to sustain whatever the artifacts are of COVID and the pandemic, while concurrently, being able to double down on the stuff that made the company grow and succeed and have all those successes that you talked about at the beginning of this conversation. So I made a lot of points there, I realize, but how do you make decisions now to decide what do we go back to, what do we not go back to, and how do we make this company continue to have this special ingredients that got us to where we are?
Yeah, I mean, I think first order principles are so important in framing any type of decision. And one of the first order principles that we continue to guide ourselves around is we've got a strong belief in the competence, capability, intelligence of our employee population. So while we continue to look at data around the world, and I agree with you, I actually think that we'll be adjusting and continuing to iterate on how to live with this virus for much longer than people predict. Even if we wind up with some type of vaccine, viruses mutate. There's going to be a constant readjustment. So how to live with the virus, I think, is a much more important set of conversations than how to kill or stop or extinguish the virus. I think that cat is likely out of the bag. When I look at things like case count, that's an interesting metric. Is that the right metric? Is the right metric? How do we ensure that hospitals are able to deal with caseload? How do we have a deep understanding of mortality and who to protect and how to effectively protect them? So constant data, I think, is going to be beyond, it has been critical and will be beyond critical in helping us live with this virus. But within the Splunk context, there are very different policies around the world. Australia has got a different situation than Japan does, which has a different situation than Germany, than Sweden, than Denmark, than France, than US, than Canada, than Mexico. And we've got people in all those different locations. So it is a difficult problem of making sure that we stay on top of the constantly shifting legislation, policy, the artifacts of data around the health and capability and safety within those different regions. And the grounding principle for us is let's make sure that we expose that information, that we adhere to local approaches and support local governments, but then expose that information to our employee population and trust our employees. We don't know what the situation is across 6,000 employees for every single one of them, and we shouldn't know. We can give them information. If I think about the foundations of data, there's 4 principles that we evangelize: transparency, openness, collaboration, and diversity of data. And if you take that approach with the employee population and make sure that they're informed and that they're able to make effective decisions, and you adhere to local policies, now I think for us, at least, we got a more winning combination. People that are informed and feel comfortable coming to an office, they should be able to go to the office. People that have that same information are not comfortable and have different situations, they should be able to work from home. And that extends to our partners, to our customers, because it is an ecosystem and it's not just Splunk employees we have to worry about. We got to think about the broader landscape. But I think having first order principles on data, having first order principles on culture and how you make decisions is always a good place to start to make sure that there's consistency for the people around you in how they should be reacting and how comfort in how you react and how they react and how the interaction actually works or doesn't work between the two.
Yeah, and I love that. And you sort of almost trickled into what I was going to ask you last, and we only have a couple minutes, so maybe I can just get you to provide a little extra context to this question. But you talked about the lasting impact that the pandemic is going to have on business. Stability is actually probably the next big step. for driving the industry and enterprises forward. Growth is a great thing to think about, and some companies can think about that now, but stabilizing the environments, bringing the culture back, getting back to innovation in this sort of post-pandemic, it's not really post, this ongoing pandemic world, you got to balance. And I think it's three things. I think it's data, I think it's innovation, and I think it's culture. And so if I could just have you touch on this as one final question before I let you get back to your trip. How do you approach these three things and maybe balance them with both humanity and technology?
Yeah, I mean, I think the really interesting part for all of us is we're not going back. This whole concept of, and you can see it in the different political landscapes around the world, the way to go back to what we're comfortable with. From everything we can tell, time has one direction. So you got to figure out how do you move forward. And I think there's so many opportunities through this pandemic and through the continuation of this pandemic for new ways to make sure that you're able to gather data, new ways to make sure that you can continue to innovate and collaborate and have a strong network of people, and new ways to continue to build culture. This morning, we have been going through a whole series of exercises, first with executive staff, and now we're starting to open up across the company on where do we see the culture today and where do we see it going. And we had one of those, really cool, typical, hey, let's get together as an exec staff and review where we are and talk about our individual styles. And those are always in-person sessions. We had a really successful virtual session where we were very intimate. We reviewed our own personal styles. We reviewed the culture of the executive staff, how that was likely to reflect on the culture of the company. And that is a totally different way of looking at data, of thinking through innovation to continue to drive the company forward, and evaluating and enhancing and doubling down different parts of the culture. But it actually worked in a virtual scenario extremely well. So I think we will all keep inventing ways to move ourselves forward, our families, our communities, our countries, and our companies in the face of very different interaction patterns than we once relied on pre-February or pre-December if you're in China.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it, Doug. It's the human in the loop of data and leadership. And I know that's an AI term, but I mean, this is a geeky event. I hope we have lots of tech lovers out there that enjoy that kind of terminology. But what I mean is it's really taking the best of empathy, empathic leadership. It's using all the data and it's applying it. It's applying it across your business. I do truly believe that the winners and losers will be defined by the companies that are able to employ data most successfully, utilizing the most useful data while concurrently never forgetting that behind all that data and every single number are people, and empathy is going to matter a lot in terms of driving the future. Doug Merritt, CEO of Splunk, I want to thank you one more time for joining me here at the 6.5 Summit.
Daniel, thank you so much for having me on, and look forward to future continued collaborations with you and the team.
Thanks, Doug.